Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about an interesting, relatively new model of psychotherapy, or sort of a psychotherapeutic model called Dialectical Behavioral Therapy.
Right. You've all heard of, most of you have heard of
DBT.
DBT,
Yes.
Dialectical Behavioral Therapy. It was created, my goodness, it must be 20 years ago now.
Probably.
I think that was at Texas.
Which is relatively new.
It's a new...
Compared to some of the other
compared to the
therapies that have been around for...
What would be 95? Would that be 05? About 15 years ago.
95?
Yeah, it was in the 90s.
95 was 22 years ago.
Well, that's when it was then. Okay.
So that was...
95, 05.
15. Yeah.
So, 20 years old, okay?
Yeah.
Developed by Marcia Lineman. Lineman. And it was originally used for as the only treatment we had for borderline personality disorder. And then over the years, other people have taken the procedure that she developed and are using it for other things. And so I thought this was interesting because it's DBT used for communications in relationships. Yeah. Interesting application.
Right. And this is on our blog, psychreg.org, and it's written by Leanna Tsangarides. And she's practicing independent social worker, practicing up in Connecticut is what it shows on her website. And the link to all of that is in the show notes. But the title of it is How Can DBT Help Maintain Relationships? And again, really like this because DBT is a lot about communication. It's a lot about looking at history and issues that are maybe creating some challenges and problems for you. And this is an interesting approach to managing relationships.
Yeah, I really like this. I love the juxtaposition of this new theory that wasn't developed for this purpose, but seems to fit quite well. It's a great application of it.
And you know that happens in our field a lot because I remember when I'm working with students, and one of the things I talk about as we kind of are approaching their time to take the test, they do that a lot on, when they look at their theoretical models, they do that a lot on tests where they'll say, hey, look at this theoretical model from family systems, and how might that apply to this work-related issue, or this, this family system, take this family systems theory and apply it to, individual in another situation. And so we do that a lot because there are lots of ways in which these in which these different theories overlap and can really complement each other. And so I really like her idea, and she uses an acronym GIVE, G-I-V-E.
And I like it because it simplifies it. Okay, it's something easily packaged, easy to remember, but great advice in each one.
And so again, what we're talking about is how to use this theory, this dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, to help maintain relationships, primarily to improve communication and to make things better that way.
And it makes me think of that course we used to teach about improving human communication and how many of our problems are communication problems. And we always began with the Challenger disaster and said that wasn't a technical problem, that was a communication problem. People knew that there was a problem, but they were afraid to report it to their superiors. So most of these things are communication problems, and most of the problems in relationships are communication problems.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this acronym, GIVE, G-I-V-E. G is for gentle. And so being gentle, as she writes, being gentle means being kind, non-judgmental, and respectful in your communications. So, it's one of those things that, of course.
Seems so simple.
But we don't do that. And I think that if most of you go into your text messages and look at your last communications or some of your scroll back and look at previous communications with your significant other, you're going to find that you weren't always gentle. And that goes for all of us.
We're all guilty.
I certainly put myself into that category where there's probably times when I could have said something a little bit differently, or I could have said something a little bit more gentle to help make sure that that my message came across in a better way.
Right.
Or was at least received in a better way.
Yeah, blaming, shaming, and accusing. You
Right.
know, we're sort of be gentle when you talk. You know, be considerate, be gentle.
Right.
So many times in everybody's home, you know, people are just be gentle when you talk.
Right.
You know, lower the tone. You know, change the tone, lower the volume, and just speak gently to everybody.
Right. Right. Now that was the G. G for gentle. I is for interested, and so.
Another
People like to be listened to,
right.
and people like to feel as though when they're talking, the other person is interested in what they're talking about.
Right.
And so what we're really talking about here is, remember the podcast we did, and I don't remember the number, but we did a podcast called Listening versus Hearing.
Right.
And this is what we're talking about. Being interested is listening.
That's right.
You know, hearing is a physiological response. That's the bones
with their
vibrating.
Ears. Right.
It's the brain.
Right.
Listening is the process of attending
Right.
to what you're hearing,
Right.
so that you can then process it and make sense of it,
Right.
and appreciate it. And that's what we're really talking about here.
When we talked about that course that we used to teach, the book we used had a lot of little nuggets
Right.
of wisdom in it. And one of them was, we are taught to speak. Everybody wants their children to speak.
Right.
You know, talk early, develop sophisticated, and we teach speaking, and we teach talking, and we teach expression. We don't teach listening.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, we always count the number of expressive words
Right.
that our little ones can use, but we rarely count the number of words that they can understand.
Yeah, and we don't teach kids how to listen.
Right.
You know, we have public speaking. We don't have public listening.
Right.
We have public speaking, and we have presentations, but not how should you act during a presentation.
Right.
You know, how do you listen? And in therapy, we do it all the time. You know,
Yeah.
become a better listener.
Yeah.
Listen with your heart and your ears.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the V in give is validate. And again, this is one of those other common communication skills that you just need to learn, and that is to validate what the other person is saying.
That's right. How do you do that?
You do that, it starts with listening.
Right. By
And
listening.
And it starts with, we did a podcast, we've done a podcast this week as well called Opinions. About opinions, and so we're talking about, you validate them by saying, I appreciate that that's your opinion. My opinion is different, but that's great.
When you're talking to me, what do you want me to do?
When
you talk to me, you come into my office and you interrupt me when I'm working, slavishly working.
Yeah.
Now you come into the office and you want to say something to me. What do you want me to do?
I want you to look at me.
That's right. And we did a podcast earlier this week about parents on their devices rather than attending to their children.
So there's a lot of podcasts that we did this week that have to do with this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because if I'm talking to you, I want you to look at me.
Right.
And, humor. I say to my kid, they say, "Well, I'm listening to you," as their opposable thumbs are racing across the screen.
I like it when you mimic people texting.
What's the?
You
I look
That's
like
great.
what?
I'm not gonna say it.
Just for that, I'm getting a Twitter account later today. No, and that's like, but I'm listening to you. No, you're not.
Right.
Listening means you look at me. I'm not going to keep you here very long. They accuse me of that. I'm not going to keep you here very long. While I'm talking, please give me the respect. Give me the look at me. I'll get this out as soon as I can.
Right.
Okay. But I want you to look at me.
Right.
That's listening. That's validating.
Right.
If you're not looking at me, no, you're not validating.
Yeah, and I think that the argument that people will have is they'll repeat exactly the words that you just said.
Yeah.
And again, that's
what you
the
said.
physiological process. That's
heard.
not the listening process.
That's right. You heard, you weren't listening.
Right. Because, we could get into the science behind hearing just later on, because we talk about different memory systems, right?
Sure.
Oh, I love this stuff. Short-term memory, long-term memory, working memory. There's another one called sensory memory.
Right.
And sensory memory is when you touch something and you can still feel it,
right.
Even after you've stopped touching it. The sensory memory that lasts the longest is
hearing.
Hearing.
I'm gonna tell my daughters this tonight when I see them. I'm saying, You heard Dr. Berney, what he said on that podcast this morning. Well, can't do it today, but...
Yeah, that's right, when it comes out. But that's why sometimes somebody will say something, and you'll say, what did you say? And then before they could even start to tell you, then you heard it.
Right.
And it's because that it's still sort of held
it's
in that...
It's still there. Before it degrades,
Mm-hmm.
it's in your brain somewhere.
Right.
It will degrade eventually.
Yeah.
But no, I want you to validate. You have to look at me while I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, when we tell people, when you're talking to somebody, move closer to them and make gain eye contact.
Right.
So that, you know, you're sure that they're listening.
Right, absolutely. Now, the E in give is easy manner. All right? So relax. Just
breathe.
Relax and breathe. And so we get ourselves so worked up sometimes when we're interacting with our loved ones or when significant others or just colleagues.
Right.
We get ourselves so worked up that it's difficult to do all the other things that we're saying that we need to do. It's difficult to be gentle. It's difficult to be interested. Right. It's difficult to validate when you're so worked up because you're stressed or because you're overwhelmed. Right. And so you need to make sure that you relax and take a step back.
Calm down, you know, as you say, take a step back, you know, take a breath, take a step back, and then have a gentle, easy manner conversation.
Right. Because it's not, we act as though many of these things are urgent, and they're just simply not. It's not as urgent as we often feel as though it is.
Yeah, and it's not a mistake that the first one is be gentle and the last one is relax and have an easy manner. You know, just take it easy. Yeah. You know, don't get aroused because you often don't hear your tone of voice.
Right.
The other person does. You may not be aware of your tone of voice. Right. You know, so be mindful of that.
Absolutely. So when you're working on your relationship, when you're managing your relationship, and you want to improve your relationship, remember to give. Be gentle, be interested, validate, and be easy.
Be easy.
Right. All right? GIVE. It's easy as that.
I like that one.
All right. So that is it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.